Hi, welcome to lesson 1 of the Foundation GCSE Maths course. This lesson is going to be ordering numbers and placed values. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you, which hopefully you can see. So this way I'll be able to write on it. Now, ordering numbers and place value are some of the key kind of core parts of maths. If you don't have kind of a firm grip on this to begin with, you are likely to struggle with some of the harder aspects of GCSE Maths. So although this is a fairly simple lesson, you've got to get a good grip on this because it will affect your being able to do your 4 rules of multiplying, adding, subtracting, all of that. It will affect you being able to put numbers in order, working with fractions. Like everything kind of comes down to this basic, can you read numbers and can you put them in order of size and understand which is bigger, which is smaller, what an impact that will have on your session. So we're going to start with ordering numbers and place value. So ordering numbers and place value. So hopefully you can see my screen. So the aim of this lesson is to be able to identify the value of any digit of a number, and to be able to put numbers in order of size. So starting with the smallest to the biggest. So words we're going to be looking at here. I talk about digits in a number. So by digits, it's kind of different to numbers. So if I had the number 279, that has 3 digits. That's a 3-digit number. There are 3 aspects to it. If I had the number 74823, that is a 5-digit number. So a digit is just each separate part of the number. So when I'm referring to digits, that's what I mean. Okay, then we have the place. We talk about place value. Now, the place is the position of the digit, and that tells us all about the number. So the place is just the position of the digit. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then the value. Now, there are questions in your GCSE that will ask you what value does each number represent. So value is talking about the size of the number. So, for example, in order of 279, the 7 is not representing a 7. The 7 is representing 70 because it's in the tens column. So that's kind of what I'm meaning by the word value. Okay, so that's what we're aiming to do in this session. We're going to cover these things and make sure you're confident with using them. And then I'll be setting some work so you can practice these topics. So here we go. So what do we mean by place value? So what I mean is the number each value represents in a position. So each number has a value. We need to understand how big, how small it is. They're not just random. There is a set positioning of them. And from that, we can tell how big the number is. So for example, if I've got this number here, 6784. Now the 6 is in the thousands column. I'll go more into which column is which in a minute for those of you that aren't sure. Some of you should be familiar with this, as I say. So that represents the number 6,000. So if a GCSE question was to ask you what number is represented by the 6 in this number, 6 is in the thousands column, so it represents 6,000. If I go again for the 7 is in the hundreds column, so that represents 700. The 8 is in the tens column, represents 80, and the 4 is in the units column and represents 4. So you see that each column the value is talking about which column it's in. We'll go through a table in a minute that will help us to put them in the right columns and understand how to say them and how to write them. So that number there is said and written simply as 6,784. So you see that the 6,000, the 700, the 80, and the 4. Now, in the foundation GCSE, you are required to be able to read or give the values of the numbers. You are required to write numbers in words. So all of this can be done using these place value tables. And it's just about thinking which column does each number lie in. So this is what I mean by a place value table. So now each one, when you're in primary school, you'd have been working with like hundreds, tens, and units, and they'd have given you like the 100 squares, the tens that were like the columns, and then the units, which were the little cubes. And you worked with those, and that's all about place value. Now, what you have to be able to do at GCSE is determine how many or what the number represents in terms of those things. So we've got a number here. And what we have to do is we have to try and work out what that number is. How do I say it? How big is it? What does each number represent? So the easiest way to do this is create yourself a table that looks like this. So the lowest number, so the lowest whole number, so if it's got no decimal point and no decimal places, we'll look at those later. The lowest number is going to be your units or your ones. So some people learn that as units. So units, some people learn that as your ones. The next column up is your tens. So remember, those are the columns of, then you get your hundreds. So that's when they gave you the big 100 square. Thousands, not many people went into thousands with these tools, but the 1,000 would have been the big cube, and so on. So the easiest way to do it is take your number and start at this end, so this far end, and write it backwards in the table. So 9, 5, 4, 4, 3, 2. Now, the reason I've written it backwards is so I end up in the right place. So now I can see that the 2 is 200,000. It's in the 100,000 column, so it's 200,000. The 3 is in the tens of thousands column, so that represents 30,000. The 4 is in the thousands column, so that represents 4,000. I've got a 4 in the hundreds column, which represents 400. 5 in the tens column, which represents 50. And a 9 in the units column, which represents 9. So if I was going to say this number, I would say 200,000. So 230,000, or let's get it right. How many have we got together? So I've got 200, I've got 30,000, I've got 4,000. So in total, in thousands, I've got 234,000. Then I've got 459. So this one would be 234,459. But it makes it easier if you put it into that table, and always start with the units one and write the number backwards. That way you're making sure you put the numbers in the correct column, because that's the important bit. So the bigger the number, the harder it is. But if you start at that units and write backwards, then hopefully you can get them in the right columns and therefore have an idea of what the value of the number is, how big the number is, and so forth. So we can use this table to help us put the numbers in size. So what we're going to do, each number, first of all, we are going to write it into the table. You might have an idea already of which ones are bigger and which ones are smaller. But let's put the numbers in the order. So remember, I'm always starting with the units column. So I've got that. Second number is 6, 5, 3, 4. Then I've got 4, 8, 6, 5. I've got 6, 4, 5, 1, 1. And I've got 5, 4, 8, 8, 6, 1. So what I'm going to do then is any gaps I'm going to fill in with zeros. So these top three, we've got 0 in the 10,000s column. And the reason I do that is then I'm going to work my way along the columns. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the first column I've got numbers in all of. So the 10,000. So if I'm starting with the smallest, I want the smallest number in the 10,000. Well, I know that the smallest is not going to be either of these two because they've got a 1 and the others have got zeros. So it's not going to be those. So then I'm going to move, for those three, I'm going to move into the second column and see which one is smaller. So the smallest one is going to be the 1 because I've got a 1, a 4, a 5. So the smallest one is going to be 1. So that's going to be that one. The second smallest one is going to be the 4 here, look. 1, 4, 5, or 4 is the next second smallest. Third one has a 5, look. So we know those top three, strangely in order already, is the 3 smaller ones. I then got to look at the 2 that I did discounted to start with. So they've both got a 1 here. So I can't distinguish from those ones. So I look at the next column in the thousands. And I go with the smallest one. So 1, 1. That's the fourth one. So remarkably, these questions were already in order anyway. 1,100. Sorry. 10,000. And 1,000, so 11,000. And then here we've got 10,000 and 6,000, so 16,000. So it's all about putting them in order of size, starting with the smallest. So we can use that table. Okay, so we write them all out first. We fill in any zeros in any gaps. And then we start with the biggest column. Choose which one has the smallest number there. Then we move to the next column, go for the next with the one with the smallest column, and so on. Keep moving across looking for the smallest one. So what we're going to do now is I would suggest you pause the video and have a go at these questions yourself. And what you're going to try and do is write down the value of the underlined digits. So if I remind you what I mean by that, first one, 341. So if I was to write that in the table, the 4 is in the tens column. So the value of the 4 would be 40. Now, if you were to write tens, you would not get the GCSE mark. So you've got to put it as 40. So the value, that is representing a 40. So if you pause the video and you give yourself a go at all of these, once you've done that, press play again, and I will be going through these now. So the second one, if it helps you to do these, what you want to be doing is writing them in the table. You might be able to do it without. Smaller ones generally are pretty straightforward. It's the bigger ones that you have to think a bit about. So 475, the 5 is in the ones column, or the units. So the 5 just represents 5. 186, 186. Well, the 1 is in the hundreds column, so it represents 100. 298, the 9 is in the tens column, so that would represent 90. 83, again, the 8's in the tens column. Remember, if you want to fill them in the table, you can. Is 80. If you just draw yourself a table, if you're using the table, that's the easiest way. You've just got to remember the order they go in. 839, the 9 is in the units, so it'll be 9. 2,380. So remember, if you're struggling to say it, use that table to help you position it. The 8 is in the tens, so that represents 80. 1,507. The 5 is in the hundreds, so that represents 500. Going up to part I now. The 0 is in the units, so that's going to represent 0 units. So it is just 0. On part J, starting to get a bit tougher. So remember, if you need to, fill it in the table. Look at which place you've written the number in. So the 5 is in the thousands. So it would be 5,000. Again, looking at 29. So the 0 is in the hundreds. So it just represents 0, 100. So 0 still. $18,254. The 4 is in the units, so that just represents 4. 4,308. So remember, as you say it, look, you're even kind of telling yourself the answer. So if you can read these numbers, is 300. Oops. And the 52,994. So the 9 is in the tens column. Look, again, if you need to write it, remember to write it. So again, look, this one's a bit tougher. The 8's at the front. So if I write it backwards, look, the 8 is in the 10,000s column. So that would represent 80,000. So notice the number of zeros I'm adding is the same as, well, see how many which column it's in. So if it's in the 10,000s, I'm adding the 4 zeros to fill it out. Good. So hopefully you've got a grasp on these and you've got a grasp of how you're getting this right now. And this is pretty kind of clear to you. Any problems, please do feel free to send me a message on the communities part on Podia. I'll try and answer any problems. So then the next part, we need to use these tables to help us write each of the following numbers into words. So here, let's put it on. So if I was to put it in the table again, look, to help me get my brain around what I've got, start at the end. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. I've got a 2, and I've got a 4. So if I look at that, I've got 4,200,000 and nothing else. So 4,200,000. So if I was to write that, it would be 4 million. Whoops. 200,000. I apologize, my pen's playing a bit of a funny game at the moment. 200,000. It's going a bit slower than I am. There we go. Perfect. That's how you write it. So again, with the next one, put your numbers in order. Think about how you say it. That is how you write it. So if you can say it, you can write it. Spelling is not overly important as long as the examiners are able to understand what it is you're kind of trying to say. So it has to at least partly look like it, but it doesn't have to be perfect spelling. And so if I was to read this, I've got 4 million, no 100,000s, but I do have 38,100. So I've got 4,038,100. So 4,038,100. I won't write it. But you write it the same way as you say, literally the same way as you say it. So if we're looking at the next one, so on this one, we've got 2 million. Don't have any hundreds of thousands, don't have any tens of thousands. So we go straight into the 5,970. So we've got 2 million, 5,970. So 2 million, I'll write that one because it's a bit more complicated. So 2 million, straight to the 5,000 because we've got no hundreds of thousands, no tens of thousands. 1,900. So notice I am writing it how I say it. 170. Oops, sorry, I was supposed to put that in words, not in numbers. Let's put it in words. It's very easy to get carried away writing numbers, but if the question does ask you to put it in words, make sure you do. And the last one here, notice I'm writing all of them backwards to make sure I get the numbers in the right places just to help me. So again, I've got 2 million. Don't have any of the other thousands, look. So no thousands at all. 671. So that would be 2,671. So hopefully those tables can help you put those numbers into words. If you can read them, you can write them because you write exactly what you read. So then you're going to write each of the following in numerals or digits. So what that means, we know what a digit is. A numeral is another way for saying in a number as a number. So I wanted to see some digits and I want to see some numbers in there. So 6,100,056. So what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to rub these numbers out so we can use this table because I didn't make the table big enough. And I want you to think about where would each number go? So where would each number go? So we've got 6 million. Well, that's going to go in the million column. 100,000. Well, that's going to be in the 100,000 column. And 56. Well, 50 is the tens. 6. So then any other gaps we're going to fill in with zeros. So 6,100,056. So that's how you'd write that number. Notice when we write big numbers, we put commas in. So the reason we do that is basically it's just to make it easier to read. Now, when you're putting commas in, you always put the commas, you start at the units and go back 3 spaces. So the commas are always going to go every 3 spaces. So starting at the end by the units, go back 3 spaces. And it just makes it easier to read the number because you're then not trying to count how many digits you've got. So the next one, we've got 9,406,107. So if you have a go at this and then see if you can match my answer. So 9 million, we have the 9 in the millions column. 406,000. So I've got 406,000. So the 6,000. 107. So I fill in all my gaps with zeros, and you should get the answer 9,406. Oops, apologies. I don't know what's going on with this pen. 107. So 9,406,107. Awesome. Right. So hopefully you're really getting more confident with these. So say I've put in the introduction to the lesson some exercises that you can do to help you practice some of these, knowing which one's bigger, knowing what value of each one is. Use those place value tables. So in an exam, they won't give you the place value tables, but you are allowed to draw them if you need to. So then we've got negative numbers. So what happens when a number is negative? It's now, in schools, a lot of the time, they ask you to draw a number line and they always draw it across the page. Now, I don't know why they draw it across the page. In my brain, so like your number line, they draw your horizontal number line like this. And blah, 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 and go like that. Now, in my mind, this doesn't help me know which numbers are bigger, which numbers are smaller. So what I've done is I've changed my number line and I do a vertical number line because it makes more sense in my brain. No other reason than that. It is up to you whether you want to use a horizontal or a vertical one, but it's all about just making it make sense to you. So the reason I do a vertical line like this is the further down the number line a number is, the smaller it is. So as we're going down and down and down, the further down it is, the smaller. So it's getting smaller as you're going down. The further up it is, the bigger it is. Which makes perfect sense in my brain, because if you think about a mountain, the taller it is, the bigger it is. A hole, further down you're going, the deeper it is. Another way is think about negative numbers in terms of temperatures. Most of us are aware that -10 degrees is colder than -2 degrees. It's because it's lower down that scale. So let's have a look at these questions. So which is smaller, -5 or -7? So all we've got to do is we've just got a picture on our number line. Which one would be further down the hole? Well, look, it's going -1, -2, -3. Further down the hole, it's going to be -7. If I said which is smaller, -9 or -3? Again, we're going down. So looking down, which one will be lower down on that scale? -9 would, because it's getting further away from 0. You're going further down. -40 or -32. Hopefully you're trying to answer these before I am. -40. Think of it in terms of money as well, if you like. If you owe somebody £40, you're further in debt than if you owe them £32. So you're further down. So it's less. Minus 534 minus 789. So look, however big the number looks, all we've got to think is what would be further below it. So we're thinking, if we think about that scale, and even all we have to do is remember the 1, 2, 3, minus 1, 2, minus 2, minus 3. If you're getting further away, minus 789 is going to be the smaller number. That's going to be furthest away, furthest down that hole. So that's kind of what you're looking for with negative numbers. And that's why, to me, the vertical line makes more sense than the horizontal one. Because I can remember going down is less than going up. So what we have to do is we kind of have to incorporate that and put these numbers into order as well. So not only do we have to be able to order big numbers, we have to be able to order negative numbers. So visualizing that number line can help you. Thinking about that place value table can help you. So if I was to look at that and I want to put, I've just put order of size. Let's start with the smallest one. So if we want to go the smallest one, we've got to think what's going to be the lowest thing on that scale. What's going to be right down the bottom of that scale? Well, it's got to be a negative right down the bottom. Negative numbers are smaller than positives. So that means we've got 3 negative numbers here, look. So we can eliminate that. Then we've got to think, which is going to be furthest down? Well, the furthest down is going to be the one with the hundreds. Because if you carry that number line down, you'd be writing for a lot longer if you're trying to get to minus 600 than if you're trying to get to like minus 40. You'd be writing a lot longer. Please don't write a number line to minus 600. You'd be there for like all day. So then we've got to think, okay, so we've used that one. Little hint, draw a line through it when you've used it if you're on an exam paper. Don't scribble it out so you can't read it, just draw a line through it or tick it or something. That way you know not to look at it again, but you can still read it if you want to go back and check your answer. So then the next one is minus 46. Next one, minus 45. So all together, I'm thinking, just write the same number again, minus 45. So all the time I'm thinking of whereabouts are they on this number line. So then I've done the minus ones. Well, the positive ones are easy. Remember, I'm starting at the smallest and I'm going to the biggest. So 36. If you want to, you can do your place value table to help you. I think you probably can manage on these numbers anyway. 63 and 364. And those are then in order of size. So with the negatives, all you've got to do is just think whereabouts on that scale are they. So I have put some questions on that you can practice doing those after this session. Good. Hopefully there's no questions. If there are any questions, please do send them to me in the community and I will try and answer them. So then we're looking at how can we apply these techniques to ordering decimals? Because this is the tough bit. This is the bit that's those grade 3, grade 4, even going into grade 5 questions when they throw in a bit of negative in decimals. Now, so this appears on both foundation and the higher paper. And I regularly see students messing this up. So what we've got to do is we've got to come up with a technique that will work for you, that will really help you. So the first thing, let's look at how we can use our place value table to tell you the value of a number. So I want to know the digits of the value of each digit in 0.745. So the first thing I'm going to write 0.745. So notice the decimal point. So I've changed the table slightly. And we've now got some decimal places, which is the tenths, the hundredths, the thousandths. So it kind of follows the same pattern as the going the other way, but you've just got the THS on the end because they're fractions. The decimal place will always stay in between the ones and the tenths. So if I've got a 0 point, I always put the 0 in the ones. And that decimal point always in the middle there. So I've written it in the table. So as you can see, the 7 is in the tenths column. So that represents the value 7/10. The 4 is in the hundredths column, which represents the value 4/100. And the 5 is in the thousandths column, which represents the value 5/1000. So I have seen this come up in the GCSE paper before, and I've seen a number of people not put the right answer there. So if it does ask you about the place of a decimal, like a value that's in the decimal bit, you must write it as the fraction. So like I've done here, 7/10, 4/100, 5/1000, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to use these to help us order. So this is a GCSE question. This has actually come off of paper. And it says, put these numbers in order of size. So we said, write the following numbers in order of size, start with the smallest number. Now, the easiest way to do it, put them all into a table. So we've got 0.42, 0.4, 0.415, 0.48, 0.46, oops, sorry, that's a 669. And then, like we did previously, we're going to fill in any gaps with zeros. So I've got 0 thousandths there, 0, 0, 0. So then, apologies for my zeros there. It's not looking very nice, is it? So then what we can do is we can look at the size of the numbers. So like we did last time, we start with the column at the beginning. Well, they're all zeros. So that doesn't help us decide which one's smallest. So we go to the next column. Well, they're all 4s. So again, doesn't help us decide which one's smallest. We go to the next column. Then we can start looking at the smallest one. So the smallest one is a 0. So this number here is our smallest one. So that was 0.4. 0, 0 doesn't change the number. It just helps us see which is smallest. The next smallest one in that column, well, we've used the 0, so it'd be 415, because the 1 is the next smallest. So that's the second one. Look again, the 2 is the next one. So the 42. Then we've got 6 and an 8, so the 6 is the next one. And then last but not least, must be the 0.48. So by putting them in order, by putting them in the table and adding zeros to make them all the same length, what we can do is then just look at the numbers there. So, I mean, I could have ignored the 0 points altogether because they're all zeros and just gone, well, I've got 420, 400, 415, 480, 469. And I can put those numbers in order, as can you, quite easily because they're just whole numbers. But you've got to add those zeros in to make them all the same length. Because what I tend to see people do is go, 469 is bigger than 4. Well, actually, that would be 400 if I'd add the zeros. So you've got to make sure you're putting in those extra zeros in order to put them into size. So here's 2 for you to have a go at. So if you pause the video again, and this time have a go at these, see if you can work out, put them in order of size, starting with the smallest. So part of the first question. The second one is about finding the distance, the longest jump. So trying to work out which one of those numbers is the biggest. So again, you might want to put them in order of size to work it out. You might just be able to look at it and tell me. So pause the video, have a go. I'm going to go through the answers here. So I'm going to write them into the table for the first one. So 0.92, 0.901, 0.99, 99, and 0.0. Oh no, hang on, sorry, doing the same one twice. Don't make sure you haven't done the same one twice. 0.909. So then fill in your gaps, look, with zeros. So I can look, they're all 0 points. So I can ignore that 0 point and just look at the numbers after the decimal. Well, I've got 99909. So this one is my smallest one. So I can ignore that one. So look at the 4 that's left, they're all 9. So we go to the next column. So I can cross that one out because I've used that one. I've got 2 of them that are zeros. So it's going to be one of those. So I look at the following column. 0.1 is smaller. So that'll be the second one. The 0.9 is bigger. So I can now go, right, I've used that one. So 901, think about it like that, 909. I've now got 920 and 990. Well, 920 and then 990 in that order. And then we've got them in order of size. Okay, and last one there is 5 boys take part in a long jump competition. The distances jumped were 4.38, 4.08, sorry, 4.31, 4.08, 4.1, 4.093, and 4.51. We want the longest one. So for the longest one, we might have put them into the table to work out which is biggest. You might be able to start looking at the columns. You might want to start adding zeros. So that would be 310. The reason I'm adding zeros is because I've got one of them that's 3 digits after the decimal point. So I need them all to be 3 digits after the decimal point. .510. So they're all 4 points. So I can ignore the 4 point and I can look at the numbers after it. So I've got 310, I've got 80, I've got 100, I've got 93, and I've got 510. Well, the biggest one is going to be that last one, 510. So it's 4.51 meters would be the longest jump. But you could have put that in the table again to work it out. Good, so that is basically all we've got to ordering numbers. So that's how we order decimals. We think about negatives, we do place value. So there are some exercises I've put in the introduction part of the lesson that you can practice with that. If you've got any questions on those, please feel free to ask me. What I'll do is I'll do a round of lessons and then we'll set a little assessment so you can see how you're getting on and whether you've understood it all. Okay, and I look forward next time. It is non-calculator, multiplication, division, adding, subtracting techniques. So I look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.